talk about cranial freeze, what I often refer to as this frozen dome helmet people experience often with vestibular issues, head symptoms in this chronic illness profile. And I myself suffered from greatly. And to look at how the psyche is responsible for forming a protective dome when we have repressed a lot of emotional material due to trauma and emotional repression, incomplete survival events, and it's now rising towards consciousness from the shadow. And this is a particular state that I've noticed appears in late phases of trauma recovery and mind-body healing. And it's often forced upon us through years and years of repression, medication, avoidance, and distraction, and of course, disembodiment. And it's a state so misunderstood that people often mistake it for neurological illness, destabilization, regression, or the worst phase of the condition, which it will feel like. But actually, it's none of these. It's, of course, as we know, it's part of this teleological drive towards completion. It is a protective cranial response, a final defensive contraction of the psyche and nervous system appearing exactly when the deepest emotional material is rising towards consciousness. And it's so important to do this so we can allow it. And this is what, I'm calling cranial freeze response, freeze dome, a braced helmet, whatever. But it's this feeling. If you have it, I don't need to explain it. But it's not pathology. You don't have something wrong with you neurologically in a structural way. You don't have brain damage, you don't have tumours, you don't have cognitive decline, although you flipping well feel like it when you're in it. It's not a structural vestibular disorder. It is not psychiatric collapse. It is entirely functional. It is happening because of deeper forces. It's the psyche's last protective brace when emotional truth, the original repressed affect and shadow material, comes closer to consciousness than it ever has been before. And to understand this mechanism, we must bring together depth psychology, somatic therapy, affective neuroscience, dissociation research, cranial anatomy, and the lived experience of late-stage trauma survivor, including me. So let's explain what it is, how it forms, how it presents, how to recognize it, and how it differs from earlier stages of head-based symptoms as well, because they too exist in this space. So let's look at a map. What is this cranial freeze response? This is what we'll call it, okay? Cranial freeze response. That's sort of describing what it does. It's a global upper body freeze pattern which involves the tightening of the scalp, the forehead, the jaw muscles, occipital clamping, dural tension and cranial membrane restriction, cortical dimming, fog, cognitive shutdown, dorsal vagal withdrawal, altered vision, balance, proprioception, emotional numbness, derealization, depersonalization, a sense of being trapped in the head, an inability to feel feelings, and a blocked descent. We can't go into the body. We're living as if we've got a helmet on our head, a dome of pressure. It's not like having a headache. It's almost indescribable to anyone who wouldn't have had it. I certainly, it's not like a headache. It's not like, it's like nothing else you'll experience. It's like a fog you can't think through. It's like you've left your body and you're just stuck in your skull. Everything feels distant, sealed off from yourself, awake but not here, and disconnected from emotion. And this state only appears when emotional material is extremely close to entering consciousness. Jung wrote, the closer one comes to the instinctive centre of life, the more does everything crowd into the head. It is not just metaphorical, as people have thought. It is a literal psychological description of this cranial bracing, freeze dome. The emotional arc pushing upwards, the ego panicking, the body tightening, the whole system going into brace, and the cranial system becoming a containment shell. So why does it form? Well, protection, pacing and buffering. No mistake, that's exactly what it is doing. I tell you, if you take it from me, the exquisite brilliance of nature, the body's wisdom, intelligence, if we can understand and get the ego out of the way, every single thing is exactly as it should be. It's absolutely amazing, and it's always trying to bring us back to ourselves. Course correct, come back, be here, let the balancing happen. Stop resisting, and it will. And when the deepest affect, the deepest raw sensations that turn into emotion, the fear, grief, shame, rage, helplessness, is trying to rise, the nervous system faces a choice. Allow it, feel it, integrate it, as of course we should, or block it, brace against it and freeze. And if the individual has not yet learned to feel safely, the ego has not learnt to feel it is okay to feel, when the emotional load is too great, the psyche will choose freeze, but at a much more advanced level than early stage dissociation. The dome forms to slow the emotional emergence, to protect the younger part, to prevent overwhelm, to reduce cortical stimulation, to keep the ego intact, to desperately keep this self concept maintained, to hold back the flood of affect now trying to come into consciousness, to buy time and to maintain psychic stability. It knows what it's doing. It won't flood you. It won't destabilize the ego more than it can cope with, and this is why we must trust it. The unconscious cannot be forced, as Jung said. This is why we don't try and release things. We don't try and force this into consciousness. We wait. And he said it must be approached with patience and respect. And this cranial bracing, freezing, is the psyche enforcing this truth. It might feel like an obstruction, but it's not. It's a gating mechanism, a pause at the threshold, a last protective brace before the material descends into felt experience. So let's look at the anatomy of this process. What is the body doing? The response is supported by real, measurable physiological change. This is not a conceptual experience. Peter Levine describes how freeze states produce upper body contraction, loss of orienting, immobility, dorsal collapse, head and neck bracing. And you'll see so many people in this stage having terrible neck pain, jaw pain, tightness in the throat, often tightness in the face, a feeling of just being frozen in this whole area. Peter Levine writes that trauma is held not in the vent itself, but in the contraction of the body. And the cranial vault is the final region that braces. This upper body, neck, and head guarding that we're talking about here. You know, this is why people experience all these stiff shoulders, neck and everything. This will be one of the things before we, please look at the last essay on this. Before it reaches its way up here, people will be on the preceding rung of the somatic ladder here in terms of somatic presentation. So Pat Ogden's sensory-motor psychotherapy identifies the exact pattern underlying this freeze dome. She said the body braces in an attempt to prevent the overwhelming from overwhelming. Exactly this: buffering, holding, titrating, allowing enough space for this to be moved through safely. She describes the neck locking. People often feel, I mean, my neck, so many people do have surgery. My brother-in-law actually had surgery, believing. Of course, he doesn't believe a word I say. His family, does he? But actually had surgery on his neck. And of course, it did nothing. And it's very, very common to have fusions. He actually had a plate put in his jaw clamping. People will, they'll be having really tight jaw, clicking, TMJ, teeth grinding, scalp tension, guarding patterns around the upper cervical spine. The back will feel completely stuck, rigid. The shoulders, everything will all be, holding. And this is the sort of foundation, the basis of this dome helmet effect. So the helmet of defensive numbness, as Bessel van der Kolk refers to it. And this is a cranial shutdown. It is the dissociative cap that forms when a person is too close to overwhelming affect. And Alan Shaw calls it cortical dimming and shutdown. Dysregulated affect triggers dissociation through cortical deactivation. Going offline, if you like. This explains the fog, the detachment, and the identity thinning. The dura, the tightening, the cranial membrane begins to restrict. This thick membrane that lines the skull is anchored at the cranial vault, the base of the skull, C1 and 2 vertebrae, and dural tension affects head pressure, vestibular processing, vision, proprioception, pain, and cognitive clarity. Can you see how this is all fitting together beautifully? It's not just speculation. This is standard cranial physiology. And if we look at vestibular distortion, Stephen Porges shows that fear alters vestibular processing, shutdown alters balance strategies, sympathetic activation changes inner ear signaling, freeze disrupts proprioception. These are direct contributors towards dizziness, rocking, spatial mismatch, visual overwhelm, out-of-body feelings, which are all elements of this stage. So, the freeze dome is not early stage bracing. So let's just distinguish here, because this is critical, really critical, because lots of people will be panicking and not knowing where they are in this. Because many people will experience head tension, fog, or dizziness in earlier stages of emotional work. These are valid, but these are not the cranial freeze response I'm talking about here. And there are 3 distinct tiers. So tier 1, early stage bracing, when people will experience tension headaches, mild dizziness. This is very different to what we're describing here. Adrenaline fog, scalp tightness, momentary dissociation, stress zaps, and visual overstimulation. Sore eyes, feeling, overwhelmed, storage full. And these are caused by sympathetic activation, anxiety loops, and basic freeze. This is not the freeze dome I'm talking about. And in tier 2, which would relate broadly to stage sort of 2 and 3 of mind-body conditions, that myself and my colleague Yonit and I of the Steady Coach have discussed. This would be sort of the mid-stage integration symptoms. So this is where people have dizziness during emotional releases, stronger brain fog, partial shutdown, early depersonalization, motion sensitivity, and head pressure that comes and goes. And these occur when emotional material is moving but still buffered. It is still not the dome. And tier 3 is this cranial freeze response. So this is the crushing head pressure. It feels like it's crushing from inside and from without, if I can remember. Oh my God, yes. Internal swelling, dural tightening, profound, annihilating brain fog, almost like you cannot use your brain. Derealization that's not just a sort of vague sense of being the other side of the glass is absolutely existential and totally terrifying. You will be in absolute terror. Bleakness, floating head, blocked descent, not being in the body. As I said, identity thinning, numbness from your emotions, feeling just like you're inside your skull, total disconnection from your body, even though you try. Vestibular distortion unrelated to anxiety, just trapped up here. And this is the freeze dome proper. And it appears only when emotional material is extremely close to breaking through. And this distinction protects stage 1 and 3 people from panic, and stage 4 people from misunderstanding the phase they're in. Ultimately, we allow at all stages, because this is a process trying to complete. So why does this freeze dome cranial bracing appear at stage 4 only? Well, because it is the end point of the emotional arc. And the body somatizes repressed affect from the bottom up, from the gut, the muscle, the autonomic nervous system, dissociation, vestibular and cranial, exactly as an emotional arc should be allowed to do in flow normally if it had been uninterrupted, because we were embodied and safe and attuned and attached to an environment that allowed us to express. So it just took a minute and a half to do this over and over. But this has been blocked, truncated, interfered with over decades, and it's now forcing its way up in this most distressing way through symptoms, etc. And by the time the material is forcing its way up through the symptoms and now reaching the head, there is nowhere left for it to go. And the cranial vault is the last refuge. The dome forms as a containment chamber for the grief, the terror, the shame, the rage, the original wounds that we weren't able to feel. And this is why the dome accompanies PPPD, MDDS, chronic vestibular conditions, severe brain fog, depersonalization, derealization, and dissociation. And they all share the same root. The psyche is at the threshold of emotional emergence. It's coming fully into consciousness. It's now delivering a message that has been trying to get through heroically for years. And this is why head symptoms are so often the last to appear. This was the stage for me. The most frightening, the most intense, and the most meaningful. And this may mark the denouement of repression. It's the final frontier, which is why it's always darkest before the dawn. It's not you're getting worse. It's actually that the journey is coming to conclusion if you allow it, if you do not resist and you surrender and allow it. So sometimes people find that this feeling comes and goes, the dome feeling. I mean, for me, it was pretty much 24/7, but it was stronger at times than others. And it's because the unconscious does not flood consciousness all at once, because it cycles. It's a rhythm. We know this. Look at the videos that are on the spiral and talking about the cycles of release. It pulses, it waves, it tests, it approaches, retreats, titrates naturally. It will release, allow, and then try and integrate. It's intelligence, it's protection. It is a metering, it is a valving of affect into the system. And as Jung said, the unconscious cannot be forced. The dome forms during this approach, and it softens when the system feels safer. People often think, oh, I'm having a relapse, I felt better. No, I'm not. I'm having a flare, I'm in decline. No. It knows what to do, and it's these cycles of going round and round and round. As the material comes into consciousness, the ego does its last effort to resist it and then accepts it. Then you have a brief period where it's being integrated, doing the wiring, doing the stuff, blah, 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 and round we go again, over and over and over again. It's rhythmic emergence, trust it. So what do we do when we get to this stage of the frozen dome, the freeze dome, this cranial bracing? Well, as we know now, when it appears for you in this way, it's because the emotional material is just too close for the ego to handle. The solution is always the same: allowing, presence. Stay with the experience gently, stay with the body gently, do not fight the pressure, do not try and fix the fog. Become the space within which all of this is doing its thing, and just know, however uncomfortable it is, wow, the body's amazing. That feels like shit, but it's moving everything round in a way that feels very spicy and absolutely terrifying. But allow it for moments at a time. And please, when you're experiencing this, you won't believe it. Write it round. The body knows what it's doing. It knows what it's doing. Surrender, allow. It's vomiting up forcibly this dense, held charge that is now trying to rebalance and help us. And it won't feel fun. This is a sort of projectile vomiting often. It can be so violent, it seems, because of the ego's resistance to it. It's been heroically trying to defend us from this, often for decades, and this is the last stand. So it will feel pretty dramatic, but it's completely fine. So we need to descend into the body, move our awareness from the head, even if our symptoms are in the head, into the body, into the abdomen, into the pelvis. Let everything be felt as the container. Become somebody. Your awareness is in your mind body, not your thinking mind. You must establish the witness awareness from here. Say to these younger parts of you, now coming to consciousness, I am here with you. You do not have to do this alone. Show me how we felt. I'm here. I want it all. And let the body speak what it's been trying to speak through these emotions, each and every one of these emotions that you had. Now, for years, having had to probably get their attention from you as symptoms to get you back in the body, to now and try and be there to open the gates so this can happen. Feel the emotion beneath these sensations. The dome exists because the feeling is blocked, and when the feeling is allowed, the dome collapses. It won't happen in one hit. You'll have to do this hundreds of times, but I can guarantee it will happen. Allow the pacing. The dome is the psyche's pacing mechanism. You do not have to force it. Respect its timing completely. It never makes a mistake, and you do not have to try and force a breakthrough. Forcing intensifies the dome because it's having to brace more. Permitting softens it naturally. I think Yonit always refers to the Chinese finger trap, and it's a brilliant analogy. Trust this process. This doming, frozen dome, cranial bracing, signals that breakthrough is very close. It is not the end, it is the threshold. You are close to the finish line. And once understood, it becomes a profound reframe. Because personally, as somebody who was in bed for 4 years with CFS, I won't even bore you with all the other symptoms I experienced. Without doubt, this was absolutely the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I don't have to tell you that. And it's not dangerous. It's not dangerous at all. It's unpleasant, but the most unpleasant thing for me was I thought, my God, this is it. I'm literally the walking dead. It was so horrendous I couldn't even describe it to people. And if only then I'd known really what I know now, because of course I can, I'm wiser, I've been through it. If I'd had someone who'd been through these exact same symptoms and who could have said, oh yeah, that's really, really hideous, but it will eventually pass if you allow it. Not quickly, but it will. God, that would have saved my life. Not saved my life, but you know what I mean? It would have just been saved me so much suffering, because the suffering over the suffering was intense. So it's not collapse, it's not danger, it's not pathology. You don't have anything wrong that needs fixing. You don't need to take drugs. You need to understand that it's the gateway to the emotional descent back into the body, to reconnect to the body. And it's the moment before the truth, our instinct, that repressed material, our reconnection, becoming coherent again, actually happens. It's the protective pause between who you were and who you are about to become. It's the denouement of repression and the beginning of true integration and individuation. And if we meet it with presence, it will do what it's wanted to do. It wants to dissolve. It wants to freeze because it doesn't need to protect you anymore. So please, please listen to this several times and really, really trust that however annihilatingly horrendous this feels, it has function and it's completely safe. And if you allow it, if we teach the ego to allow what's coming into consciousness as sensation, as experience, this really is the final furlong.